Okay, so just for anybody else who just joined, change your name to your name and then city, state where you're from, and then throw into the chat just your title in the school district that you represent so we can kind of start getting people connected to each other if you're in the same areas. So first, I just want to welcome everybody to our second community practice call. We are super thrilled to be able to do these and not only share the insights and best practices that we as Phone Free School Movement have, but also allow guest speakers to come and share their knowledge and experiences with all of you guys. Today, we are going to cover our best practice definition. We're going to run through just quickly what is in our administrator toolkit that was released last month. We're going to hear from a wonderful guest speaker that we have today, Chris Cope, and then we will have plenty of time at the end for questions and comments. Real quick, for those of you who have not had the opportunity to connect with us directly, so Sabina, Kim, and myself are the co-founders of the Phone Free Schools Movement. Sabina and I are both in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philadelphia, and Kim is in Kansas City, Kansas. Between the three of us, we have 8 children. We're just so thrilled to be able to have started this nonprofit and work together daily to drive forward and impact change for our kids. I'm going to turn things over to Sabina, who's going to cover our best practice definition and our toolkit.
So we really want to share this best practice definition because it's something that we really hold steadfast to based on extensive conversations that we've had with school districts and administrators that have implemented successful policies. So our best practice definition that we follow of a phone-free school is a first bell to last bell policy that requires all personal electronic devices, which include cell phones, smartwatches, earbuds, AirPods, fitness trackers, and Bluetooth connected headphones to make sure that they are securely locked away and inaccessible for the entire school day. And as we mentioned, as Maleva mentioned, we just released our administrator toolkit last month. If you haven't downloaded it already, please visit our website and under the resources tab, you'll find our administrator toolkit, which you can request a copy of. And this toolkit, we really wanted to make it as straightforward as possible for all of you to be successful in implementing a phone-free policy that meets our best practice definition with minimal pushback and maximum success. So what's included in the toolkit is supporting data. So we've included research, graphics, and benefits that have come directly from schools that have successfully implemented policies, implementation materials such as a rollout timeline, a step-by-step guide to implementation and everything that involves, and a model phone-free policy that's based on our best practice definition. Engaging in stakeholders with your stakeholders and properly communicating is really important to a successful policy. So we've included letters to all stakeholders, ready-to-use letters, surveys to help gather information from your individual schools in order to help communicate with the stakeholders more effectively what's actually going on in your individual schools. Frequently asked questions, which are geared towards parents so that all the questions are answered before the policy is rolled out. And that really helps to minimize any pushbacks. And then common pushbacks is geared towards teachers. So everyone's on the same page and aligned when handling any pushbacks that might come from the policy. You can go ahead, Maleva.
I'm going to actually turn things over to Kim, who's going to welcome our guest speaker today.
Thank you. I'm honored to introduce Chris. Chris Cope is a dedicated member of the Warren County Schools Board in Middle Tennessee, which serves approximately 6,200 students across 12 schools, including one virtual school. Since being elected to the board in 2022, Chris has quickly risen to a leadership role, being elected chairman in September of 2023. In addition to his responsibilities on the board, Chris is a passionate advocate for creating a healthier learning environment by leading efforts to make Warren County schools phone-free. His commitment to education is matched by his deep roots in the community as a successful small business owner with over 21 years of experience in Warren County. Please welcome Chris Cope. It's all yours, Chris.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for that kind introduction. I'm not sure if it's warranted or not, but I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak about our track as a phone-free school district. Now, this is a fresh process. We really started this in March, and then by June, we had a policy in place, and our first day of school, which was first week of August, we were rolling it out. So this was a joint effort. We put a lot of work into this, but we're here to say that it can be done, and it can be done successful. It's not going to be perfect, but it can be done and be successful. So Warren County, as I said, we serve about 6,200 students, about 12 different campuses. We have an award-winning virtual school. We're located in Middle Tennessee, and we're known as the nursery capital of the world, and our nickname is Tree City, USA. So we can move on to the next slide. This is our board. We were just recognized last night at our board meeting as a board of distinction for the Tennessee School Board Association. So, and then our director is in that picture as well. We actually have 2 members that will be rolling off. Last night was their last meeting. We'll have 2 brand new members joining us in September. So we're excited about that and the work that we can do as a board. We have a 6-member board, as we said. So how did we all get started here? First of all, I was asked last Christmas by a teacher that's one of my neighbors said, "Hey, we have an issue with cell phones. We can't compete. We're drowning here. It is just an issue after an issue. I just don't know what we need to do." A separate thing that some of our community leaders started was these, what we called a middle school safety summits. And that we joined in with our general sessions judge, our juvenile court leader, our SRO officers, and we were talking about, they wanted us to talk about the vaping and a lot of things that were going on in the middle school age, absenteeisms, and things like that. This was well attended. We went to every school that had 6th through 8th graders, and we brought them in for about a 30-minute session, just talking about the juvenile system, the court system, the importance of making right decisions. If you'll skip on to the next one, we had, you see, I've spoke at some of them. In the middle picture is our sergeant of our SRO program, who is going to be our newly elected school board member, who will be joining us next month, Officer Johnson, and another school board member speaking. We really took pride in, as a board, of being there in front of our students, showing them the importance of making good decisions. But one of the things that happened towards the end of this was we had an issue at one of our middle schools of a bathroom incident with the cell phone and recordings. And the judge looked at us and said, "Hey, we've got to try to figure out something to do here. Something needs to be done." Our SRO officer comes to us and says, "Hey, when it comes to discipline, we're looking at probably 75–80% of all of our discipline issues are contributed to cell phone problems. What can we do here?" Well, I know we have a policy in place, but what really can we do? So that question just kept in my mind. So I went back. If we go to the next slide, we're going to start looking at some independent surveys, I guess, that we did. Went back to the first discussion I had during the Christmas break with a teacher, and I said, "Hey, let's do a little independent research." So I went out and I asked a few of our high school teachers. I was like, "Hey, let's do an experiment for me. I want you to have your students get out their phones, turn the volumes on, and place it on their desk. I want you to record about a 15-minute session. Every time the student has a notification or what we call a distraction, I want them to go up on the board and mark it, and mark what app or whatever that went off." And we had a history teacher, biology teacher. We had several teachers in the high school and even our middle school. And when they started sending me these pictures back, I was floored. It was so alarming to see the distractions in this. When you see 15-minute biology class, 149 notifications. To go to the next slide, another 5 minutes, we had 151 distractions or notifications that went off in a 5-minute period. And the key thing to look at that is the social media aspect. How many of these are social media related? Going to the next one, and it just continues on. The next one, 1 hour class in biology class, 140 distractions, 90 of them are social media. So to point out this social media distraction, because in a minute we're going to look at some results of some surveys that we put out to our student or to our teachers and to our parents. So let's go to the next one. I'm trying to keep up here. So this is a history class. The first 15 minutes of class, this is 8 o'clock in the morning till 8:15. We got 66 notifications or distractions that's going off in these classes. Let's see. Get down to the next one. And I stumbled upon Jonathan Hyatt on a podcast, on Joe Rogan podcast. And I listened to this and I was floored with what the data was telling us. I was floored by his information that he put out there, this social psychologist that was giving us the data of what these cell phones were doing to our kids. And I was even more floored, even more hurt, I guess, wondering why this information is not more mainstream, why we're not seeing this information out there of the effects of phone usage, screen time, social media on our kids, which led me to pick up his book, The Anxious Generation. So after reading this, listening to him, I started sharing my concerns with the board members. Now, we're still in March. We're fixing to have our March meeting. So a couple of other board members picked up this book. We were reading it together. So for the next 2 or 3 board meetings, we had this book sitting on our desk, quoting some of the data, some of the finds in his experiments and stuff. So I urge you, if you've not listened to an interview with Jonathan Hyatt on any kind of podcast or anything, I urge you to immediately do that when this is over with. Pick up this book and read it, and I promise you, everything's going to start falling into place on why this is important. I've got a daughter who turns 13 years old today. Today is her birthday, and she turns 13. And the statistics that show the impact, especially on our teenage girls, it is just heartbreaking when you start seeing the implications of how the mental health state and all these things are affecting our children. So moving on to the next slide, which led me, after doing a little research, led me to these amazing folks, to the Phone Free School movement. I listened to some podcasts that they were on and some interviews with these women. And then I reached out on social media. I sent them a message on Facebook, and I mentioned our ideas of trying to do this policy. And they were just opened up. It's like, oh yeah, anything we can help us with. And they followed along. They would be watching our board meetings and followed us along and helped me along carry this out. So I mentioned this policy as a phone-free, bell-to-bell policy that I would love to see in place in Warren County in our March meeting. And trust me, this wasn't the most well-received by everyone, and even in our boardroom. Our director of school said, hey, good luck with this. I just don't know how this is going to work. But grant you, he's got 2 teenage kids that are in high school. One of our other board members has a daughter that's a senior in high school, and I've got one that's upcoming that's about to go into high school next year. So trust me, those conversations at the dinner table with our own children was not very well received. There was some cold comments and some cold looks. So the next thing, after our March board meeting and we discussed this policy, I had one of our board members pulled out a poll, a Survey Monkey poll, to the teachers and one to our to the teachers and one to the parents. So this poll was pretty amazing. Some of the things that we saw, the polarization of the difference of thought between what we as parents think and what our teachers are really dealing with. And I think as a board member who is a parent, you have different beliefs. You think, well, this is my child and they're not doing these things. So as a parent, these are a couple of these slides, and I hope when we get done, we'll be able to share the whole survey with everyone. But as a parent, do you feel like students should be allowed to have cell phones in school? And you can see the numbers there. Quite alarming. The majority of parents believe that students should be allowed to have their cell phones in school. Let's go to the next one, which is kind of interesting. What does your child mostly use your cell phone for? This is how we as parents sometimes think that our children are these good kids in school. So we think the majority of them looks like they're doing only texting and for emergencies only. Well, we know that that's not the case. If we look back at those numbers at the unscientific poll that we done in the classroom, we're looking at 60 to 70% of all the notifications, distractions that were going off in our classrooms were social media related. So we have this valley of information from our teacher side to our parent side that we just are in this big gully that we can't seem to be on the same page. We'll go on to some of the questions that we had on our, this is the next one on our parents, and it says, how do you feel like having a cell phone affects your child's learning? This is in stark contrast to any information that we've received over what learning and cell phones are in place. Most parents think that it's a neutral effect, that our cell phones have no effect on our kids' learning, no effect on our kids' mental health. Very few think it's got some negative effects or very negative. Go to the next slide down. A parent poll again, how does this affect your kids' mental health, your children's mental health? Again, very few see that it's negatively at all. It's either neutral or positive or very positive. If you go to the research, if you look through any of the data that Jonathan Haidt puts out or any social scientists, these are in stark contrast to anything that we have. We know that a child's mental health decline has been directly correlated with the use of social media and cell phone usage. I think we're going to the teachers. A couple of questions out of our teacher survey. It says, if you allow your students to use cell phones, what is their primary purpose? Again, emergencies is always the top one because that's the easiest answer. But if we have this kind of a percentage of emergencies in our school every day, then we're have a bigger problem than we realize. So it's this understanding that we're not understanding what our kids are doing. We're saying, oh, they're only using it to communicate and for emergencies, when we know good and well that's not what our kids are mostly using their phones for in school. The next slide says, how does their cell phone affect your students' learning? This is for teachers. Our teachers are giving us a different picture here. They're saying that these are affecting them negatively. That phones in our classroom are affecting our learning negatively. If you're a district like us, you see the decline in some of our test scores, and we're not happy about that at all. And where are the answers? What are the answers of getting our kids motivated again to learning? Next slide is, this led us to really focusing on this, to having some hard conversations. We knew that this was not going to be the most popular thing. We knew our students didn't like it. The parents were wishy-washy about it. They didn't know. My child does not do their, it's those, well, my child doesn't do this. My child doesn't do that. But the teachers were saying, hey, look, we have a problem. We can't keep up with 150 notifications, distractions, if you will, every 15 minutes. We can't compete. We have a hard enough time trying to do our job. But like most districts, we had a policy in place. It was a policy saying that no cell phones were allowed in class, and you could only use them during free time and lunch and in between classes. But those things wasn't being followed. They've been in place for years. And if your board is like ours, we do a mass passive of policy every month, or when we do our policy changes, all right, we'll lump 50 policies in one and make one passage. And that's kind of where we got lazy as a board. And we were just saying, all right, we've got this policy in place. We didn't really take a look at it. So we revamped the policy with our legal team, as we put our heads together, we went through, and this is actually before the toolkit that these ladies have put together. So just want to plug that toolkit as amazing guideline of how to do this. But we had some important keys that we gathered from our principals, our administrators, of how this policy needed to be. And the most important thing that our administrators come back to us and says is, there can't be any room for a teacher or administrator to have authority to use their own discretion. Because that was kind of the policy, the old policy. Well, at teacher's discretion, they could let their children have their phone, their students have their phone at the end of class, downtime, whatever. That leads into a lot of gray area when you have discipline issues. So a couple of keys that we wanted to implement in this policy. So we rewrote the whole thing, but the keys, it must be bell to bell. It must be completely bell to bell, not allowed during lunchtime, not during changing of classes, not during recess, not during any time. We also had to have no discretion for our teachers or administrators to have any say in who can use their phone and who can't. This was a relief to our administrators. They breathed the biggest sigh of relief, saying, "Thank goodness I don't have to, police this. It is out of our hands. It is a board policy, and we have no control over it." So that is their answer. If there's a problem, hey, it's board policy. We can't do anything about it. Another thing, the punishments have to be strict, they have to be precise, and they have to be clear. We have to let everyone know that we're serious about this. Before, I think our old policy had like 6 different steps before you got to the most severe punishment. We've cut that down to 4. And then we got this in place by our May meeting. We decided we wanted to have 2 public readings. We were pushing this on social media. Hey, this is what we're looking at, or invite anybody that wants to come talk about it. So we had 2 public readings, our May meeting, our June meeting. We read the whole policy off, and we voted unanimously 6-0 to become the official Warren County School District policy. We do believe, and we've not been told any different, that we are the first district in the state of Tennessee to go completely county-wide, district-wide phone-free. There are some districts that have certain schools that are that way, but we are completely from K through 12, phone-free, personal electronic device. And that is including smartwatches, earbuds, any sort of technology that can be used to communicate with someone else. After that, we were at a conference in July, and we started getting emails from our principals that they come together, and they actually asked us if we could strengthen our punishment, make it a little more strict, because they felt like it was just a little too lenient, and they wanted it to set an example. So next meeting, we went in and made the adjustments that our administrators had asked for, and so we've even made the policy even more strict. All right, how to implement this was our next slide. We chose to go with the yonder bags for all 6th through 12th graders. We have yet to receive them. They are behind on production. Our director said he spoke with them yesterday, I think, and we should have ours by September 6th is our deadline. So we're going to be almost a month in our school without our pouches. So that has made challenges for sure. That made the first few days of school challenging, to say the least. It wasn't too bad on the morning of getting the phones, but it was in the afternoons of getting them back out distributed to the students. But our amazing staff at our schools worked hard to make this process smoother and smoother as the days went on. And so far we're in pretty good shape as far as getting phones taken up and getting them out, which hopefully the process will be a little easier once we do get the yonder bags, which will be, like I said, September 6th. Our small district made some big headlines. We've made almost all of the national news stations with interviews, and the Tennessean newspaper done a great article on us about how we implemented this plan. Going on to the next slide, our communications team got together about a week or so before the school started, and they ramped up our social media presence. They were putting out calls to our parents. They come up with this slogan of less distractions and more connection. It is really catchy. It is true. If you read the data, the research, the less distractions our children have, the more connected they are. So feel free to use this slogan if you like. It has been taken off pretty well. I think we've got a couple more slides. The next couple go into just different ways of using that, of kids being more interactive. One thing, last night we had our school board meeting. We have a student advisory panel, which students from our high school come and give us updates on things that are going on in the high school. One of the interesting things was our club rush, which is the different extracurricular school clubs and stuff that they have during school. And they done a report on those, and the attendance rate was through the roof on these. Some of our clubs actually told us last night that they had a record number of students signing up for these extracurricular clubs. And I think that has to come from this cell phone policy. As our kids are becoming more and more connected with each other, they're less distracted. They're engaging more. If we go to the next slide, this is a few of the very first day of school, a couple of quotes that we were received back from some of our staff, some of our teachers, some of our cafeteria staff. As this one says, the first day of school, very first day of school, this cell phone policy might be the best thing we've ever done. Freshman lunch with no phones was absolutely awesome. Next slide says, I'd actually talked to our principal this morning, and I said, hey, give me a quote. And he said, our students and teachers have been more interactive with one another. Students, surprisingly, have been happy after the initial shock. They have adjusted well, our teachers are happy, and the atmosphere is back to an educational environment. I've told our board throughout this process, we can't really control things that go on inside of our school buildings. That is our teachers and our administrators' jobs. But we do have control as the power of a school board. We do have control over policy. And if we can set a policy that makes our kids have a better environment for learning, then we should do that. That is our calling. That is what we're supposed to do. Well, that's what we're elected to do, to make our kids better educated and give them the best possible environment to learn. And we can do that through policy. And I think this policy in itself will change so much lives in our students. We're less than a month in, and we're already seeing all these things. Next one more quote, and this has been told to me 2 or 3 different times. I had one of the teachers stop me this past weekend at a park, and he stopped me and he said, this has simply been a game changer for the teachers, game changer for our students, game changer for the atmosphere in our schools. One of the things that this is not just in our area, but in all areas, we know that teacher retention is an issue. And we know that one of the number one reasons that teachers are leaving the profession is for discipline reasons. I really do believe that this policy is going to help that. I see teachers all the time that are going in excited about school again. They're not having to fight with a phone. They're not having to compete with these distractions. They are engaged with their students. Their students are engaged with them like it used to be. And I really believe the positive effects of this are just going to be amazing. Are there pushbacks? Absolutely. There's some people that are not excited about this. Students, like I said, after the initial shocks, a lot of students are coming around to it. They understand the issues, and they understand the importance of it. I think they understand there's a relief. I think there's a relief to them not having to worry about who posted what on social media, who done this. We had an incident on this past Friday at our high school of a threat. And it was, our communications team put the word out through our social media and through our call alerts. We didn't have one single social media post about who said what, who's going on, what's going on. My kid said this, my kid texted this, and I heard this from none of that, because our kids didn't have their phones to text their parents or text their whoever to say this is going on in school. I believe this already has been an effective policy just in the first few weeks, not only for the benefit of our children and our staff and our teachers, but also things like this. It keeps us safe from a lot of distractions, even as parents and people on the outside. I do want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank the ladies for putting this together. It is amazing. It's hard work. And we're not, like I said, we're not going to get it right every time. But I go back to that last quote, which was said to me directly by a high school teacher. And there is no reason why every district isn't doing this, because it truly is a game changer. We are seeing states that are passing legislation to do this statewide. We don't have to wait on that. You guys do not have to wait on the state to pass this law to say, hey, we're going to do this. Be bold. And take a stand. Yeah, there's going to be people that's not going to like it, but the results are going to speak for themselves. Again, there's many things as a board we can't control, but policy is one thing that we do have. We have the power as board members to change that environment, and we owe that to our students, we owe that to our teachers, and we owe that to our staffs to change this environment. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. I think we're going to have some questions. If anybody's got any questions or comments, I will try my best to answer all that I can.
Awesome.
Thank
Chris,
you
thanks
so much.
so much. Oh, sorry, Kim. I was just going to say, Kim is going. If you want to ask a question live, Kim will address you. Just make sure to raise your hand and she'll call on you. We also had several people who couldn't make it just with back to school chaos, so they emailed questions. So if we run out of questions live, I have a list that I'm just going to also try to get answered and make sure we get those questions answered as well. So again, raise your hand if you would like to ask a question live of Chris or us from the team.
You again, Chris. That was a great overview of your policy and also inspirational to hear your call to action. So Kathleen, I saw you were waving your hand.
Yes, hi. Yeah, that was great. I appreciate how you went through step by step how this evolved in your district. That was really helpful. But I do have a couple of questions. One is how much do you have any specifics of the parent pushback that you've had? Like, and do you have a number of like how many parents have reached out or said they're going to leave the school district, or have you had many things like that happen?
Well, personally, and talking to our board, I've not had anybody personally come up to me and say, hey, I don't like this. Of course, you see some chatter on social media, on Facebook posts and whatnot. We did get some numbers from our attendance yesterday, and we are down a little bit, and we wonder if maybe some of that is parents are pulling their kids. It's hard to tell at this stage in the game. Our numbers will rise and go. There will be threats of, again, nothing personal to me, or if anybody's reached out to me and said, hey, this is terrible. A couple of pushbacks about the cost of the pouches, but we did use our ESSER monies through our safety grants to purchase those. So it wasn't really, out of the district money, out of our money. So that, trying to explain that to people how that ESSER money worked and how it's about to go away, and we can use it for school safety things, these grants that we can only use for specific things. So we did want to get that word out of this is how much it costs. These are, I know people are kind of pushing back on the pouch deal, but we know once we get it implemented, it'll be fine. But again, we know there's going to be certain parents that's going to push back and certain people that's not going to like this. But I think after, like I said, just a few weeks, we already see the positive impacts of this. And I think once parents see that, they're going to like, okay, let me step back from this for a minute and let me see in a month from now or 2 months from now what my kid looks like. Let me see if my grades are getting better. Let me see if that social aspect of our kids are getting better. And I think those are what we're going to see. You see in school systems that's implemented this over a period of time, and you see these things, these changes in kids' behaviors. You see this, the joining the clubs, being more social, and test scores rising. I mean, so I think that you will have pushback, but I think it is the right thing to do. If you look through the data of what this does to our kids mentally, what social media and the notifications and the distractions, we as adults are hard to keep these distractions up at our own jobs. So imagine a kid sitting in a English class that they're not really excited about, and then you've got the whole world wide web right here at their fingertips that they can keep blocked out. So again, you will have some pushback, but I think in the long run, there's more positive than there was negative on any pushback that we got from parents.
That's awesome. And that's really hopeful. I feel like, to know that probably most of parent pushback is maybe chatter on, and that they're not actually going to do anything, because I do think that a lot of administrators seem to be fearful of that. Like how many problems we gonna have with this?
I think so. And, one thing is, let that SR, we had our SRO or sergeant or your sheriff's department speak at the meeting and say, hey, we know all of these discipline issues are because of the cell phones. And the biggest pushback is, in case of emergency, I need to get a hold of my kid. Well, let the sheriff's department, let that SRO or whoever you have there, we know nationwide, our teachers and their staffs have been put in, training after training after training for these situations. They are as much a professional as anybody. So let those people speak at your meeting and say, hey, yes, we support this. Like I said, we got our general sessions judge behind us. We got our juvenile court, director behind it. And, those community leaders that are saying, hey, we see the negative aspects of cell phones. So let's at least give our environment, at least our schools, because we have the power to protect that environment. We can't say what happens outside of our school hours, but we can protect those students for that amount of time. We have that authority.
Chris, I think that's an excellent point, because I see a lot of as some pushback in that they're going to be on it right after school. So what's the point? And the point is to give them that 7 hours free from those pressures where they can focus on school. And I'm most encouraged by the engagement in the after school activities, because I do think that says a lot. I have a couple questions, unless somebody else wants to ask one live. If not,
I have a or two. I can wait till the end though. Go ahead.
no, go Brandon.
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, I may have missed this, but while you're waiting on the Yonder pouches, where are you guys storing cell phones for the time being?
We actually we have lockers that we've put in our offices and in our libraries. So it has been a little bit of an issue, not so much in our middle school classes because you have a little bit fewer students. And now I think when it gets to our high school, most of our students are usually leaving them in their vehicles. So they're not even bringing them on campus anymore. And I'm sure there's some that still having them in their backpacks. So we can't, seal them all, but we've not had any issues so far that I know of a cell phone being used in school.
Great.
So it has been a little bit of a tricky not having these. And we really think, as we talked last night, that it probably next year before we really get the Yonder pouches in place, great, that we're able to use them to the best of the ability anyways.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, sorry, the other question I had was, did you guys receive any pushback from parents regarding the medical need for phones and
yes.
How did you guys respond to that?
Well, that is in policy, because any kid that has a medical 504 plan or an IEP plan that it comes from a doctor that they need those are available. And the kids can have those phones for those times, if it is the glucose monitoring or whatever it is, as long as it's in their 504 or their IEP plan, then they have a waiver from this. They're just not allowed to use it. If they get caught using other than for medical reasons, then, that is a great question and pushback, because, that is something that one of the first questions besides the safety part is, well, my kid needs it for medical reasons. And as long as they're in their plans, then there's no issue with kids being exempt from that.
Great.
Brandon, I want to add that Yonder has a Velcro pouch that doesn't lock with the magnet. So kids that have been given that exemption to utilize them for diabetes or whatever, their pouch Velcros. Also, we know districts that still don't allow the phone. They instead give the student an iPad that they can do all that monitoring on an iPad, so they don't have their phone. So there's a couple options.
I love that idea. That's awesome. I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah. Randall.
Hi, I was just wondering, have you had to discipline any administrators or teachers because they weren't following the policy or giving pushback to the board or to their administrator?
That's a good point, and I did not bring that up, and I meant to. We had some issues on our notes, but with the implication of the new cell phone policy, when we passed that, we went back and revised our staff policy as well. And that we strictened it to where staff cannot be on personal social media accounts during school hours. They can still have their phones because that's still part. We have one of our safety things we just implemented is locking doors, so they have to use an app to get in use lock. But they cannot be allowed. They're not allowed on social media during school hours. They're not allowed to communicate with the child through social media at any time. Have any kind of friend request or anything like that have to be denied unless it's a family member. So we did stricten that, and unless you're on the social media account, the school social media account that you're uploading pictures for the schools, you're not allowed. And we stricten the discipline issues of that too. I mean, that goes, third offense of that is 2 days off without pay. I mean, so we told our staff, everybody has to buy into this. We all have to be in this together. And the staff has been amazing. I mean, like I said, after day one, they're like, yes, we're in. And I talked to one of the ladies that is over one of the social media accounts at the high school. And she said, I find myself not even taking my phone to take pictures because I'm just so wrapped up in what's going on. So it's, like I said, it's like a fever. It's just catching around. And so again, there's going to be bumps. There's going to be things you're not going to do completely right. But I think this is the right thing to do.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've shared with our Phone Free Schools Movement team some of the procedures that you changed. For example, if you could tell in more detail how to communicate about changes to after school activities or sports.
That was a big thing of, well, what if practice gets canceled or they move or this or that. We have relayed to our office staff in each school that, hey, we're going to be having more communications from parents calling saying we need to get notes to our kids about who's picking them up and this and that. And we do realize that, especially in today's time, there's more of a 2-parent, household where one kid will go to another parent's house and they may need that phone. So, but at our high school, what we've done is we've put monitors up all throughout the hallways and certain points in the hallways. And then we've told our coaches and our teachers and anybody that's on these apps that we may have, band directors, they're going to go directly to that. And that when they post, it's going to post on these screens throughout the school. So kids walking by can say, oh, baseball practice was canceled today. I don't have to go to practice today, and those will also be on the apps for parents too. That, so we're really pushing our parents to get on board on our online apps through our schools so we can communicate with them better. So I think that's been a big key of, kid looks up at the lunchroom, oh, look, band practice is moved to whatever. And, so I think that has helped a lot.
Communication, right? It's all about
Communication
communication.
is the key.
Maleva, you want to
There's
hit
a way around every issue. There's a way around it. And that was one of the things when we first started talking about this, one of the art teachers was like, hey, our students really use our phones for taking pictures of whatever projects they're working on, and they need this and that. And I was like, you know what? These kids are smart. They will be able to figure out a different way of doing this. Let them use their brains to figure out a way of not using their phones to capture their art. It's art, by the way. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing, using our imagination. So I've not heard another word from that teacher. So it must be working out okay.
Maleva, you want to hit a question from that was
Sure.
submitted?
Yes. Okay. So, what has been your best approach for attracting community buy-in? And I will just tell you, for Sabina and I, that was something we kept hearing from our superintendent. Like, we have a policy in place, but if we're going to revamp anything, we need the whole community to buy in. So you girls go out and, get that support. And we just wanted to kind of hear from you, like, what your thoughts and best practices were on that and what you guys did to try to get the whole community involved.
It's strange because have we tried to push this through our meetings and saying, hey, and maybe other boards may be different than ours, but we just don't have a lot of interest in our school board meetings. We don't have a lot of people showing up. We don't have a lot of people watching it. So we went 3 or 4 months, we would reach out to our local newspaper and they would run out, but then after it passed and after the first few days of school, then parents, then we started seeing some kickback about, of course, all social media related. I can't believe they've done this or this, that. We've been talking about this for the last 4 months, and tried to reach out to the community. So I think it is just communication. I mean, not trying to push, I mean, and with the research, and I think that was key to the toolkit you guys put together with the data that's in there, the information. If you tell your a parent that their 15-year-old daughter is 10 times more likely to have mental illness because of social media than their 15-year-old son, that's going to be alarming. When you see these rates of self-harm, of suicide rates, of the pressures of what, especially, like I said, I've got a teenage daughter now, especially seeing what they go through, the bullying, all of these things that they're trying to grasp, and then trying to learn what they're trying to learn in school. I mean, these minds are not fully developed yet. We are the adults in the room, and sometimes you have to do things that are not popular, and you have to do things that that is best for your own children or for others. And that's, sometimes you just have to push through the negative and say, you know what, I know this is for the best. I know this is for the best. I had one of our, let me see if I can pull this up real quick, because I think I lost it in the slide. But one of our youth pastors who works a lot with our schools, and they do a lot of things, but he told me this last night. He said probably the hardest thing to be in our society today is a teenage girl. There's so many voices, so many influences constantly telling them that they don't measure up, or how they have to be like this, or how they have to be like this. And what's the solution to that? And I think these girls may be on the right track to find out there. He listed 4 things, but the number one thing was community. You need it. We weren't meant to walk this life alone. And that's what we see in our schools through social media and things. We thought social media was supposed to bring us together, but it is not, really not. It's done right the opposite of that. So community is the key for our kids. So again, I think that you're not ever going to get 100% on board, but it is the right thing to do. And like I said, within 3 weeks, you're starting to see the positive impacts. The teachers will be out there advocating for you day one. They're going to be out in public, and they're going to say, this is amazing. And you can see it on their face when they leave school. It's just a whole different atmosphere.
Chris, you had other ways that you communicated to the stakeholders. I know I happened to get on your website like the week before school started, and you had a video. I think it was the superintendent.
Yeah, our director of school superintendent put out a video, and of her walking through the policy and how things are going to look a little different, and buying into this. And and I think, I've not looked at it lately, but we had over 50,000 views, and we only have 40,000 people in our whole county. So I mean, we're starting to set a little trend, and we're seeing other people that are watching us. And that's what I told our board when we made a vote on this. It's like, this is going to be historic, and we don't realize how important this is going to be, but people are watching. This is going to be a trendsetter. We're going to be the first in the state. Our high school, middle school, we're the Warren County pioneers. And so we've used that word as being pioneers through this in our state of showing, leading by example. And it's not always easy to be the first person, but it is much needed.
I just want to make sure we're all aware of time. So we have about 8 minutes left. If there's live questions, please raise your hand to ask them. If not, I have a couple more that I can read through. I'm going to read a private message I got actually from a parent in a school district somewhat in the area where Sabina and I are. So it's actually on the opposite end. So they're getting a lot of pushback from administration, principals, and teachers. And so I'm just going to read their message. This person went to try to advocate at a school board meeting and directly interacted with the administration and principal. The principals actually said that they think it's good for the kids to use their phones and decompress during lunch, in between periods, and after school times. Gives them the ability to have their brains kind of settle down from all the education that they're taking in. She approached the superintendent and school board with all the research that we as the Phone Free School movement had recently pushed out to include our toolkit, and let them know to try to attend some of the webinars that we do, and received an immediate response that said they have the best policy in the state, which allows smart devices all day in their high school. It's too challenging for staff and administration to get these kids to follow any other rules, and so they're going to continue powering forward with how things are currently in place. She's just a fellow advocate, really looking for guidance from somebody in your position who is in a position of authority to try to be able to implement change, and trying to figure out the best way to tackle somebody who is unwilling to make that change.
and that's got to be a tough position to be in. And I feel for her. If they're not going to look at the data, they're not going to look at the statistics on how this is affecting negatively affecting our children, it's almost disheartening. But the board, the Board of Education can make this, and they are not controlled by the principals. They are not controlled. They're not even controlled by the director of schools. As a board member, I am the boss of our director of school. We only have one person that we're in charge of, and that is the director of schools. We don't have any say in staff or anything else, but we are in control of policy, and we are in control of that director's job. And boards, we're probably fortunate we have only a 6-member board, which may make it a little bit easier. But I would just advocate for her to tell her, just keep pushing your board members individually, give them that data, send them links to podcast or to interviews. I mean, there is some, we use some of this, like I think Jonathan Hyatt was on a CBS Morning News. It was just a short 30-second clip. Keep sending those out. Send that out on social media to parents, to school groups. If you've got whatever school your kids go to, if they've got a little parent group, your PTOs, put that public pressure on these people, on these elected officials, because we are elected officials. Hey, this is important. Here's what looks like when schools have been implementing this. This is what it looks like. This is the positive changes in school and in our kids. So I feel for her, and I hope that she doesn't give up, because I do think that this movement is growing and growing and growing, and eventually it will be the majority of schools, and then the other schools will be on the outside looking in, thinking, "Man, we should have done this a long time ago." So
we agree with you, Chris. Kathleen?
Yeah, I just heard a similar thing at my board meeting last week about kids needing to decompress with their phones. And I do think it's a belief that a lot of people have that don't understand the brain science behind what happens when you're getting on a screen, and that being on phones are not relaxing or decompressing. They're the opposite, and they're overstimulating our kids. So I think if that's something that we can work on helping to debunk that myth, maybe
I agree. And one thing that I wrote down here is have something put in place. And during those times, whether it be games or board games or card games or some sort of something, just to keep them occupied and interacting with other kids. It's you go down the halls now and you start hearing the chatter and the talk and this and that. And beforehand, you went down the halls and all the kids were just looking down. No interaction. And now in our school, it's loud in the halls again, and it's fun. And kids can't wait for that break so they can go talk to their friends in between classes, like we done when we were in school. So this generation that of these kids don't know life without this phone, and that's what's sad. We've given them this device and said, here, and we didn't put any limitations on it. Said, here it is, go have it all. And as a parent, that is my blame. That's my fault to allowing that and not having that, saying, oh, I didn't realize the bad. I only looked at the benefits of it. So, but yes, have something put in place to take that time away from them, whether it be games or, simple things. Kids enjoy simple things. So.
Maleva, you want to round us out? We're about 3 minutes.
Sure. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that wasn't really covered by the conversation. And I think we probably covered it all, because a lot of them were just around how you did it and the pushbacks and that kind of stuff. And so I just want to, thank you, Chris, the presentation and hearing from real life world experience from somebody who did it and powered through all of that is amazing. It's definitely something that our community can learn from as they try to also impact change and implement these into their own school district. So thank you for giving us your time and your experience and your knowledge. We're really, really thankful for that. And then for everybody else, thank you for attending. I know several of our admins weren't able to make it because they're in the throes of back to school right now. And so this meeting was obviously recorded. We will make sure to share it outward with everybody who registered for this call. Our next one is tentatively scheduled for September 24th, but as we finalize our guest speaker and get the logistics of that sorted out, we will make sure to get that to all of you, as well as the sign up registration link for that. And then, as always, please make sure to reach out to us as you guys are in the throes of this and want help or need a shoulder to bounce some ideas off of. That's why we here at the Phone Free Schools movement are here, and also just other guest speakers like Chris, learn from his experience. If you have any topics you want us to specifically address in upcoming calls, let us know. We will put it on the list of topics that we want to try to get to. And then Sabina, Kim, or Chris, is there anything that you guys want to add before we let everybody have the rest of their afternoon back?
Just that we will.
Sorry. I just want to thank you guys for this opportunity, what you guys have done and putting forth the effort in this. If you're listening and thinking about this as a board member, read the book, read The Anxious Generation, get the toolkit, use the toolkit, because it is everything in there that you need to make this work. And if you see those numbers and you see those statistics and you can look at me and say, oh, I don't want to do this, then I really feel like you might want to look at your calling, and maybe you shouldn't be in the position you're in, because we can provide a better environment for our kids.
Thank you, Chris. I don't know if I shared with you that one of the board members in my kids' school district bought the book, The Anxious Generation, for the entire board and the superintendent. And I was in a meeting with two of the most likely board members to read it, and I asked them if they had read it. No, the answer was no. So it's getting them to read it, right?
You can listen to it. You can listen to it on Spotify.
And there's a good hour video. You can Google, and he has a presentation he did that's well done. And you can find that on smartphonefreechildhoodus.com, that video of Jonathan Haidt talking through the book. So we will email out the recording and some of the resources, the survey. Hopefully Chris can provide us with the whole survey link, as well as maybe the video, the introduction video that was on the website. Somebody asked for that. And if we get all that, we will send it in via email.
Okay. Yep. We'll get that out. And
Sabina, anything from you?
No, just a big thanks, Chris. I learned something new from you every time we chat. So really appreciate it. You're an inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
all.
you, guys.
Have a good day.
Stay tuned
Thanks,
for more
guys.
info.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.